Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Mark from Crediton Library, part of Libraries Unlimited, and we are today discussing gaming for International Games Week 2021, and specifically why gaming is good, why we like gaming, how we might like to get into gaming with families and friends. This might be role-play games, it could be tabletop gaming, board games at home. We're going to have a bit of a discussion, give some recommendations, give some ideas for how you might like to get into it if you don't already play. And joining me for this discussion are three friends from the gaming world and the world of the internet in various ways. And I shall let them introduce themselves, starting with Fiona.
Oh, I was not expecting that. Hello, everyone. My name is Fiona. I run two podcasts. One which is one that's What Am I Rolling, which is a twice monthly RPG one-shot podcast, which involves lots of different systems or role-playing games. And the other one is a D&D lore podcast, which is called the DM's Book Club. And if we're doing the bio thing, I've been gaming for at least 5+ years, which is a weird one to say out loud, but yeah, and I'm generally interested in gaming from any kind of system, anything that involves collaborative storytelling. And I'll pass it on to David.
Excellent. Thank you. David.
That's right. Choose me just as I'm having a drink.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, so I'm David. I am also from the world of the internet. I have two podcasts as well. One which is my own one where I talk about folk tales and folklore. It's kind of gone a bit spooky at the moment, so it's maybe more spooky stuff. I'm also part of a role-play podcast called Darker Days Radio, where we look at horror-themed RPGs. So if you like the darker side of gaming, definitely go along and check that out. Gaming-wise, I have been gaming since I want to say about 8, maybe 9, like board gaming then. Then I got into Games Workshop, and tabletop mini gaming from there, and it kind of grew from there. I now spend most of my time running RPGs with these wonderful people in one game at the moment. So, and I've done various other things elsewhere. I'm published as a writer as well, freelance writer for RPGs.
Thank you.
I'll pass on to James.
James.
Hello. Hi there. I'm James. I co-host the Loremen podcast, which is kind of a fun sideways look at kind of folklore and spooky tales and things. I'm very new to gaming. I've been gaming for 2 months.
About that, yes.
About that. I've kind of always been interested in it, but as an only child, I put the only child in very lonely childhood. I didn't really have anyone to play with, sadly. So yeah, it's quite. I'm sort of being introduced to it at the moment and very much enjoying it.
I was an only child too, so I can appreciate the need to look elsewhere if you want to sometimes play games, perhaps. And I should say as well that we're also approaching this from various aspects of kind of family and friends approach as well. James, you have 2 young children, am I right?
Yeah.
I have 1 teenage girl, and Fiona and David are approaching it from the friends gaming aspect.
No children at all.
No children here. I am a child, however.
we are all
yes,
children.
We're all children.
We're all children at heart.
Yes.
So I'm going to pass over to David, who has very kindly offered to chair this particular discussion. And by chair, I mean fire questions at everybody else. And we will see where it takes us. So David, over to you.
Cool. Okay, so as we're going to look at start at the very kind of surface level stuff. When we talk about gaming, everyone has their own opinion as to what that means. And in society recently, it is starting to change and is becoming more popular. So when we talk about gaming, what do you all think of as gaming? What is it to you that you see as gaming? Because we are starting to see this trend with a lot of the YouTube channels coming out, and it's starting to hit into modern broadcasting and things. So we are seeing it as a rise of popularity. But what is gaming? What are we actually talking about? So we'll start with Fiona, because you are quite well aware of it, and then we'll go from there. So what do you see as gaming?
Oh no, you're going to pick on me for every question to start off, because I'll have lots to say. So for me, I think gaming, actually, I think just how I've grown up with it, because similar to how James was saying, later on in life have I discovered this world of role-playing games and board games per se. It's actually video gaming. And I think what's been very interesting in the last 5 or so years is that obviously video games have got better graphics. You've got multiplayer, you can play online with other people. But there is a different kind of joy you get by going over to somebody's house or going to these board game cafes or a pub or anything like that, and just playing in a world that isn't created by computers or math. It is just created by something in your own head that you share with other people. And with stuff like Twitch coming out and stuff like that, obviously it's been around for ages, but actually streaming board game reviews and like actual plays. Obviously, everyone who's into role-playing games will eventually hear of Critical Role, which has basically transformed Dungeons and Dragons over the last 5 years into, I think, as a big push to be like, oh, this is how you can play your games. It's not just people rolling dice, calculating stuff and stuff. You can actually have a story to it. And I think that's what's very appealing to people, is having that immersive experience that you don't have to be an actor. You don't have to go to, say, Secret Cinema or any of these immersive events to pretend to be somebody. You can easily do that. And you can do it with your friends, and you can have these sort of, oh, you had to be there for when so-and-so kicked down the door and we defeated the bad guy with just a couple of rounds and some talking. So yeah, it's just very, for me, it's gone from video games, maybe solo per se, to a point where people have gone, well, actually, we want to have that connection with other people. We want to go for, I don't want to say physical, because you can also play board games and RPGs online, but it just, I think having another person there that's not dominated by graphics and video gaming. So yeah, I think for me, it was video games for a long time, and then it's now transgressed into board games and things. So overall, as an umbrella term, I think board games and role-play games has sort of come to the forefront for that.
It's kind of it's a social interaction, being there in person, gathering. I can relate to that very much, kind of liking to sit with a group of people, like-minded people as well, which is quite nice. So come to James next, because you are coming into this world of RPGs. I dragged you into it, and you seem to be enjoying it. So I'm hope I'm doing okay with that. So what for you now that you're kind of seen a few things and played a few games, what to you is kind of gaming now? How do you view it? Or how has your opinion changed, maybe? If it has changed.
Well, it's kind of it's what I had hoped and anticipated it would be, kind of thing, which is like I think for me, the sort of unique thing, certainly compared to video games and stuff, is that you, as the player, can really do whatever you want. And it's kind of up to I'm not sure what the official term is, but the game leader type person to roll that into whatever, the world that you're in. And I mean, that seems like an incredibly difficult job, but it's good when someone does it really well, basically. And yeah, it's just the enjoyment of being able to it's kind of like that playground thing when you would, when you play in the playground and you play whatever, soldiers or what have you, and your mates will kind of join in, but it's an ability to actually sort of sit down and concentrate and really kind of construct that world and enjoy it between you.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like you really need someone who knows what they're doing to kind of lead it.
No? We never know what we're doing, James.
We never know. Fiona, we're well versed in this. We never know what we're doing, and all it needs is other people who are good at kind of carrying a story and just having fun with it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but yeah, cool. So Mark, as well, you have a few years' experience.
Yeah,
for you.
It's many things. I think I would take it in a slightly different direction as well. Gaming on the whole is a chance for anybody, no matter what age or ability or social group or anything else they are, to step away from the real world for a little while and play. As James said, it's anything from, playground games, it's in their simplest form, hopscotch, something like that as a playground game. It's an ability to play. And obviously children do that all the time. As we get older, we have less opportunity than we perhaps should to be able to play. And that's really what it is. It's a mechanism for being able to step away from everything else and to just enjoy that whole process of play. Now, that could be, it's a very social structure, very social thing, as you say, but it can also be on an individual level. There are plenty of, solo games from the very simplest forms of solitaire and patience and those sorts of things with a pack of cards, through to solo board games, if you like, dice rolling games, card games, perhaps not role-playing games quite so much, although there are ones that you can do, but it tends to be that people use those more as a kind of social interaction environment. So whether you're looking at dice rolling, card laying, board games, or role-playing games, it is just that opportunity to be able to move away from the real world for a little while and play.
I think that's a very good thing. It's that moving away from maybe the stress of everyday life and having a couple of hours of just remembering that you're a kid and living in a fantasy world. I remember being as a kid dressing up and playing as a knight or an astronaut or something. And the game that we're playing all together at the moment, Alien, we're all kind of effectively playing astronauts or space marines again. And it's kind of, it brings that kind of child back into you as well. But I also think you hit on another point as well. What you said there, Mark, is you said it doesn't matter who you are, your age, or what you're doing. You can always, everyone always enjoys playing games. And one of the things that I found is with a lot of the groups, whether it's through the internet and streaming or whether it's in person, going to board game cafes, events and stuff, it really doesn't matter who you are. Anybody can play a game. Anybody will. I found it a very open and welcoming community. So you can literally just turn up to some events or a board game cafe, speak to the owners, speak to the person who runs it, and they'll be able to help you and they'll deal with you in a very good way. So the groups that I'm up with in Manchester are very much like that. But rather than going down there, so we've talked a little bit about what gaming is, and we kind of want to know maybe what some games are then, and kind of discuss what would maybe be good for families and maybe even beginners or just families in general. So I know, James, you're probably not aware of many of these, but we can give you some ideas and give you some things to pick up.
If any of them leap out at you.
Yeah, we can throw loads of ideas at you to go and buy and spend time with your kids.
And all your money, yeah.
For me, one of my favorite simple games that I generally, when I kind of talk about board gaming and introduce board gaming to people with, is Carcassonne. Or what's the other one? The other big one, Settlers of Catan. So these are the kind of
I've played Catan. I've played Catan.
Yeah. These are the two big ones. Catan is like the biggest one, which isn't Monopoly, basically. But I love Carcassonne because it's simple. You are just laying pieces down and then putting your, this is where the word comes from. It comes from this game, meeples. You put your meeples down and you make a city or you make a road or you make a farm just by playing a single card down. And then you build up this wonderful map. And yes, it is based upon Carcassonne, the place in France. So that's kind of where I would go. Or I'd look at something similar to Carcassonne like Suro, which is, again, it's the same idea. You put a piece down, you just build a maze and try and make the other dragon fall off the maze. But
Suro,
where I would go.
Yeah,
It's
really good.
Sura is a good game.
Yeah, simple, but also very visual.
Mm-hmm.
There's no complex rules in any of these. You can kind of go a little bit naughty with Settlers of Catan in the way that you say some things, but we'll leave that for the adults to work out that one. But there's some sheep and there's some other things in there, so it's quite fun and family friendly. But what about Mark? Where would you go if you were trying to look at bringing? Maybe you were visiting James and you were going to bring some games over. What would you take to James to show him?
I think some very simple and straightforward games that we enjoy and that work well with kids as well. One we did a playthrough of actually as a very simple thing for last year's International Games Week. So the video is still on this YouTube channel actually. Is Roll For It, which is a very simple card and dice game where you lay 3 cards down and they have combinations of dice. Each player has half a dozen dice and you have to roll and match your dice rolls with what's on the cards to win them and win the points that are on that card. But it becomes strategic because obviously you need multiple goes to match everything and you have to start putting your dice next to cards to save them. You know, I am working towards this card, and obviously everybody could be working towards the same card. It's very, very simple and works really well. Another one which is very easy and works really well with kids is Dobble, which is just, you have sets of cards that have different symbols on them, and it's really a sort of fastest eyes first thing to work out. It's the whichever symbol appears on the same cards. You're laying, 2 cards down. Both of them will have a matching symbol. There will always be one symbol that matches on the cards. First person to say it wins those cards, and that becomes very fast and furious. But because it's all symbols, kids are really great at it, and it's a good game for kids to beat adults at. Frequently, actually, you have discovered. And probably a little bit further from that, another one which is a little bit more advanced, but still really great for kids is Ticket to Ride, which is a board game that has a number of different variations, European, American, it's good for geography as well, where you have to, so you have to win train lines, essentially. I won't go into the rules now because they'll take up a little bit too long, but it's very, very easy to play. And in fact, if you have one of the more popular home help systems that are available that you can talk to in your lounge, it will actually score for you as well. There are apps available. Brilliant. There are apps available that you can, it will run the game for you. You tell it that you want to play Ticket to Ride, and it will run the game for you and keep score, which is really good.
How fun.
Yeah, it's a really good one. There's another game similar to Dobble called Cobra Paw. Rather than it being cards, you are rolling dice and you're holding your hands up, and then you have to touch the domino pieces, which match the symbols on the dice. Super simple and great fun for kids because it's basically them slapping their hands down on the table trying to find the domino pieces. So it's kind of a bit more of a aggressive version of Dobble, I suppose. But kids are amazingly good at it, and I absolutely suck at it. But yeah. So what about you, Fiona? What would you suggest us? So we've got a few here. You can go to RPGs if you want.
I have notes, David. I'm ready. Get ready, James.
Everyone get comfortable.
Your bank balance is going to go down. No. So yeah, I think what's great about those board games as well is obviously they're a great way into it. But I think I'll say it. Dungeons and Dragons is huge right now, and it's everyone's streaming it. It's fairly straightforward for some people, but there is a lot of dice rolling. There's a lot of mechanics and stuff like that, and it can get very tedious if you're doing lots of combats and the kids aren't interested or anything like that. but it is popular, and as soon as if your children are into dragons and being adventurous and high fantasy, then it's definitely one way to go. And the basic rules you can get for free pretty much anywhere you look, so you don't need all these amazing accessories and stuff like that. She says, hiding all of the accessories behind her.
But that's an important point. There are lots of games that are free online to find as well, and it's something we'll perhaps touch on later on. So it doesn't always have to be costly. Plus, of course, Dungeons and Dragons has had a great resurgence because it featured on Stranger Things, which is why it's popular with kids at the moment too.
Absolutely. And speaking of Stranger Things, that's such a great segue, Mark. So in case you're not into like fantasy, but you're thinking of sci-fi and you want to play people your own age or something like that, then one thing that is similar that I've played is Kids on Bikes by John Gilmore and Doug Lewandowski. It spawned a whole series of like Kids on Bikes, which is very Stranger Things, small towns, weird things happening. So you get a very Twin Peaks-esque type thing or a supernatural type thing. They've done spin-offs, which is like Teens in Space and Kids on Brooms. So if you want to go into different settings, obviously magic and space, you can do that as well. If you want to go for a more, and I say gritty, obviously, you know your own kids, or you know how children are. They're different levels of maturity for sure. If they want to deal with certain topics and stuff, then you'd have to have a conversation with it. But maybe another game, which David introduced me to, was Tales from the Loop and Things from the Flood, where you're playing children almost like a sort of in the 80s and early 90s, but as if we have strange technology now, and there's some incredible artwork. I can't remember the artist, I'm sure David will say in a second, but it is just, you see kids on bikes looking at this huge creature in the sky coming down, and it's just a natural thing. And having those sort of worlds which aren't just medieval olden times, it's like here now happening and creating those stories.
It's
the other thing as well, I've played Tales from the Loop as well. It is a great game, and the other nice thing about it is that it has a very, very simple dice mechanic.
Yes.
And I think with sometimes people
what we're doing with Alien. So, James, you'll recognize the dice system. It's the same as Alien and Besson, so it's super simple.
Sometimes people are a bit scared of the idea of role-playing games. And it's not necessarily the role-playing aspect that they're scared of. It's that they perceive this complexity of the rules. And yes, some role-playing games are, brain-twistingly complex, but that one certainly isn't. It's very, very easy. And there's more of a focus.
Like Scandic. Just the setting wise, it's Scandic noir Stranger Things, but with kids and like a handful of D6.
Yes, and a big push on storytelling as well. It's not that you're endlessly rolling dice; it's in the telling of the story. And I think the best role-playing games, for me, certainly are the ones that are based more on storytelling than they are on dice rolling.
And with that, another fabulous segue, Mark, to my final recommendation. So well. You're doing it amazingly. So yeah, I agree. Mechanics is the important thing, because again, you want to make sure like there is consequence, right? And you want to make sure there is something, but if there's so much of it, you kind of lose the story aspect, which I think is very important when you're doing it with your families and stuff. And at this point, I don't mean children. I mean, if you're playing, like I have been trying to play with my parents who don't get it, and it's not their thing, and they're like, well, there's too many rules and stuff like that. I want to recommend Quest, which came out last year or the year before, which is essentially you can put it. It's like almost like it is like a settingless system, and all it is a D20, and obviously the higher you roll, the more chance you'll succeed. And that's it. And it just gives you some, like, if you roll a 20, that's brilliant. You've done it. If you roll between 19 and 11, you've done it, but not as good as a 20. 6 to 9 or 6 to 10, you've done it, but with some consequences. And then anything below that is a failure. So even on a 6, you will still succeed. And I think that's the important thing, is that you should be moving the story forward. There should be some chance to it, and that's all you need is that mechanic. And I just think that's great as well, and it's got some really good
great mechanic, that idea. It's something we are seeing a lot more now within role-playing games. It's been brought in as popular through something known as Powered by the Apocalypse.
As
a system where it's kind of a fail forward system. Even if you fail, you can still succeed. But you just might you picked a lock, like you're trying to open a door and you've got a lock picks. You managed to pick it, but you didn't roll very well, so it took you a long time, or you broke your lockpick, but you still managed to open the door.
Yeah.
So coming to James, new to the world, I would ask for your recommendations of games. Not sure how many you've played or what you would recommend.
Well, Uno's a big one in our house.
Nice.
Yeah.
With the 5-year-old and 6-year-old, he's just learning how to cheat at it as well.
This is
gone
the
next
question.
level.
Can you do the thing that they keep saying you can't do, which I've forgotten what it is? Is it the you can keep going around adding the plus cards on top of each other?
Oh, keep going around.
Adding a +2 to a +4. Yeah, stacking. I think stacking. I think you can same type, but you can't have 2 +2s and say that's a +4. I mean, really. Yep. And video games as well he's quite adept at. So that's kind of, but that we originally found an online version of Uno on that, and then
amazing
transferred into the real world kind of thing.
I think that's an important point, actually, is that sometimes video games get a bit of a bad press with, kids spending hours online on video, and yeah, maybe in some instances, but actually they can also be really positive too. When our daughter was much younger, and we've still got video footage of this because it amazes us even now. She had an app called Piano Tiles, which little black squares that scroll down from the top to the bottom. And every time you press the square as it goes past, it plays the next note in a tune. And you start from very, very simple tunes like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star or whatever. And then you work up to insanely complicated stuff like Bach's Toccata in Fugue. And she got to the stage with that and similar apps where she honestly looked like she had about 7 hands. And it really developed her fine motor skills immensely well. And there are some great online games now that are fun to play, but also have that developmental aspect to them too, I think.
I mean, even like your sort of classics, like he's 6 now and he's playing Zelda kind of thing. So he's kind of grown with it. It's, he's not reading the story quite yet, but he's exploring a giant world kind of thing.
Yeah, so there's on the kind of world exploring front, games wise, we see a lot of the RPGs that kind of like Dungeons and Dragons. They kind of have these. Dungeons and Dragons is not meant to have a set world; it's meant to be world free. But there is a setting there.
You can, yeah.
And Pathfinder and Shadowrun and all these things. They have a set universe that you kind of play in, and you go off and you go and fight dragons and bad guys and things. There are other games out there which are just literally about exploring the world and just kind of going around and finding these things. And one of the great ones, and I know Fiona, you'll be experiencing this soon, is Numenera.
I've already experienced it. It's brilliant.
Oh, you've done it. You've done it. Okay, cool.
I've done it.
It's a really, really simple system. Just a D20 again, with plus where the storyteller or the GM, the games master, will have a number in his head, and you just have to roll above it. But you're just going around and walking around and doing the whole Zelda thing or the Final Fantasy thing where you're just walking around exploring the world. You're not going off and fighting anything. You just walk around, explore the world. You might find some treasure. You might find a weird maze. And it's really, really good to just kind of engage the imagination and just explore and build a world rather than going around. So I love Numenera as a system. And there are some other spin-offs from it.
And actually, I think that's a good point, David, as well. Like, and I think this is interesting because we had that point about video games earlier, is that not all RPG systems are combat focused. So I think there's this whole thing about violence in video games. I mean, it is prevalent in role-playing games as well. There's always a section I find, and it goes, here's how you run combat. And you're like there is always a resort to violence at some point, which, again, depending on how you feel about it, like I'm not a big fan of it myself, just because it's a lot to learn as a DM. You're like, oh God, I have to do admin. No, but speaking of sort of thinking of dice mechanics for that, one of my favorite games I've ever played is a game called Sleepaway by J Dragon, where essentially you just all play summer camp counselors, and you have to just protect the people that are at your camp. And you've all grown up with the camp, and essentially there is this big bad called the Lindworm, who you've never seen, but it's a 10-foot tall creature that wears human skin, and it's a campfire story. And instead of doing any dice rolling or anything like that, you're just having a conversation, you're describing what your characters are doing. And you make, I think it's, I can't remember, it's Dreams Askew, I think it's the system, where essentially you have weak moves, normal moves, and strong moves, depending on your character type. And normal moves, you can just take anything. You can do it whilst you're saying it, it's totally fine. Strong moves, you have to pay a token to use them, because they're usually something very positive or powerful, that I jump in front of somebody to save them from something, all that sort of thing. Weak moves are the interesting ones, is usually where it's something cowardice, or you open yourself, or you insult somebody else or something like that, and then you gain a token when you do that. And when you start, nobody has any tokens, so you have to play a lot of weak moves to begin with and cause almost this tension, this thing between players, and then you can use strong moves and stuff like that. And I just remember at the end of that game where nothing bad happened at all, it was just us talking it through. And one of our friends, we realized through, and I appreciate everyone does this, where let me tell you about this game I played, which is super boring if you're not there. But one of the players, it turned out, had never existed. We just all made them up as this camp counselor. All of us were lonely people that just imagined this person had come to help us at our darkest moments. And I remember at the end, when this person then disappeared in the dawn, I burst into tears as a player, because it was so heart-wrenching. And I think the fact that I was so vulnerable at that point, in front of strangers I just met that day, and we all said what a good game that was, just because we just talked about it and not used any dice rolling, not anything left to chance. It was just us talking about it. Now I appreciate, obviously, that might not be the game for you. You're like, oh, I just want to play Dungeons and Dragons and kill the dragon. That's totally fine. But I think there is something interesting about just talking it through and having experiences like that. It definitely made me think about that game for a long time afterwards.
So there are, as you've heard from this little bit of discussion, there's so many different games out there. Especially one of the things that me and Fiona are mainly interested in is RPGs. So there's a really fun one which I think is for kids. I forget the name of it, but basically you're playing a goblin and you've got to survive 24 hours in an orc camp and not get eaten. And one of the major parts of the character generation is drawing the goblin. So
is this Goblin Quest?
It possibly is Goblin
by Grant
Quest.
Howat, yeah.
Yes, it is, yeah. And you just draw your goblin, and that's your one of the major points for character generation. So for younger kids, you get to draw a stupid picture, a really crazy picture, and that is your character. You design your character, and then you try and run around and not get eaten by big orcs. It is really, really crazy fun.
I suppose I should also throw into the mix as well at that point, actually, from a library perspective, that the old choose your own adventure books, which those of us of our sort of age grew up with Steve Jackson and even Ian Livingstone's versions.
I've got a shelf over there full of them.
Yeah. We all had Warlock of Firetop Mountain book 1, but
I've got first edition still sat over there.
Do get you? But these are still immensely popular as well, and there are lots of them available that cover popular programs and topics like Doctor Who and things like that. Choose your own adventures. There are ones that are written from a dyslexia-friendly perspective now as well. So if you need further assistance with reading, but you still have the opportunity to play through those, and that's a real good opportunity because it's got that dice rolling element, it's got that character generating element. From the point of view, purely selfishly, as somebody from the library, it's got that kind of reading and literature perspective as well, and they're just good fun to play. And they are still very, very popular.
I was well into those, actually. The Choose Your Own Adventures probably more than the Fighting Fantasy, because I think with the Fighting Fantasy, I was a bit too young to quite be able to keep track of all the dice stuff, basically, which kind of might have put me off. Do you remember the Osborne Puzzle Adventures?
Yes, they're still going to.
They still go. Those are really good. I'm looking forward to when they reach the age when they can play those.
Oh.
Well, not really play them; they're more like puzzle books, but in essence, a series of puzzles with a story.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still remember being a child just doing the choose your own adventures. You'd read it, realize you've gone the wrong way, and then try to work backwards to where you made it. I didn't do it, so I'm not cheating. Honest, no cheating happening here.
When you got all 4 fingers at your last 4 choices, because you've just been thinking this isn't going right. This can't be going right.
Well, you think of like, say, 80s TV shows like Nightmare and Crystal Maze and all these things, which again are gaming to extent where you're watching people play it. They're now immersive experiences. And like Nightmare Live is now on the stage. You have improvisers helping a random member of the audience go somewhere. Obviously, Crystal Maze, we've got it in London. I think it's in Manchester as well now.
There's one in Manchester,
Yeah.
The one in Manchester is haunted.
What? Oh, yeah, and I was about to say, James, you said it as well. The Dark Room, which is incredible. As I've watched so many of his Twitch streams, I will say that they're not family friendly, though. I will say that. That's it's absolutely fascinating. It's such a great pastiche on those text line adventure games. Yeah, really.
And also, television technology has moved on sufficiently now that TV, if you are on a streaming system like Netflix or Prime or one of the others, is now also becoming interactive. I might or might not have watched and played Escape the Undertaker on Netflix the other day. If you're into, it's essentially if you're into the old wrestling characters, it is the Undertaker from WWF/WWE wrestling, and it is an interactive story. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. It is a drama. One. Yeah, it is a drama, but every so often it's like, do you want to do this, this, or this? And then you get different segments of the program. Yeah.
There was the first one done by Charlie Brooker, which is not family friendly.
Not family friendly. Escape the Undertaker is family friendly. Fiona's making a note of it now, I can tell.
I am. It's also 4.2 out of 10 on IMDb. So I hope you get ready to play it lots of times to make sure you get all those endings.
Don't believe every rating you see in the press.
No, of course not.
So cool. So if we've gone through a couple of games, we've talked a bit about our own experiences and things. If you had one game night, you were to go over to someone's house who had got children. Maybe we'll say we're going to go to James's house. We're all going to turn up at James's house for a
surprise.
One day. Surprise him, just randomly turn up, knock on his door. And you could only bring one game. What would that be?
Or a particular age range? Or
we'll say for 5 to 10-year-olds.
5 to 10-year-olds.
That the entire family can play one game that you would put automatically on people's list. And give you a second to think about this. I've got one which is in my eyesight at the moment, which is a bit stupid.
Why do you start us off?
You lead it off then.
Yeah, lead it off.
You wrote the question, so you're better prepared than everybody else.
Exactly.
And we'll all think about it.
I literally just came up with this off the top of my head just now.
Tell us anyway.
I'm literally just trying to segue this game into the talk because it's in my eyesight over here.
Okay.
I've got to try and remember the full name of it. It's Epic Spell Wars of the Battle Wizards of Mount Skullfire. I'm just going to get the game because I can't remember.
Hang on.
It's got a really stupid name.
Excellent. How interesting. The longer the name is, clearly the better it is. That's the motto.
I never remember the name because it's such a crazy name. Epic Spell Wars of the Battle Wizards Duel at Mount Skullfire. It kind of fits that kind of weird, slightly kooky comedy and slightly naughty comedy that young children have. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but it's...
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. There you go.
There you go. That's right. Yeah.
Perfect.
Oh, wow.
Really funny artwork on it. All you do is you make stupidly named spells and shoot them at each other.
Amazing.
There's a little bit more mechanics behind it than that, but way I play it rather than following the rules is I just look at the cards and make the stupidest named spell that I can. You get a beginning, a middle, and an end of the spell, so it's 3 cards, and you just make a spell name, and it's hilarious because some of it's like vomiting plasma volcanoes and things. So it's just a really fun one. It's really, really quick. Each time I've played it, it's different. You get different spells coming out because there's a lot of cards in it. And there's lots of different versions of the game as well. So it's really quick, really simple to teach. And kids love it because the artwork is very, very visual. The words are quite large, so it's easy to read. And it's very, very engaging. The images match the words as well, so it can help with the reading if you're looking at small kids who are trying to read and learn stuff. And you get to create stupid stories about this duel between a load of wizards on a mountain, flinging stupid spells at each other. You kind of have fun with that, and then you can, with that, build up ideas of storytelling and moving into more different games. That's kind of where one of the games that I would bring.
Okay, I'll throw in a couple that we've got that.
One game.
Oh,
narrow it down, Mark.
All right.
This was the evil part of it.
All right, one game. So not
one game you would recommend or would actually take.
Okay, so not Throw Burrito, which was one of the ones that I was going to mention, but I won't mention Throw Burrito, which is entertaining and probably worth looking up.
Throw Gherking now as well, isn't there?
Okay, but we won't go for that one. So I will go for a slightly more obscure game, which causes us much hilarity whenever we play it, which is a game called We Didn't Play Test This at All.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Which is a card game where you have loads of cards which have different instructions on them. And there is a massive variety of things. Like one of them might be to play rock, paper, scissors. Anybody who gets rock or scissors or paper is instantly out of the game. But then there are other cards that you can play that will say, unless this. There are other completely random ones, like you play this card and everybody loses, but so do you. And that's the end. And it is ridiculous and makes no sense at all, but is hugely entertaining. And kids love it as well because it is ridiculous. There's a card like Are Zombies. If you play that card, everybody has to say zombies before they take their turn. If they forget, they're out of the game. And these things stack up. So there might be 3 or 4 different things that you have to do. That one is really good fun and very, very easy to play. There is another one now called We Didn't Play Test This Either, which is a sequel to it. Yeah, that's good.
That sounds absolutely brilliant.
It is. It is good.
The good thing, just as a quick thing, good thing with games like that is you can actually also play those online.
Yeah.
Through a streaming service. As long as everyone has a visual access to the cards, they're quite easy to play through the internet. So board games aren't now all just board games. Some of them are a little bit harder to do online, but you've got other systems which allow you to play games online. But it's now not. The world has become a very much more open place. So Fiona, what one game would you take?
Right.
I've got a different question for James.
Which one would you take out of these offerings we've given you? Actually, I was having to think about this because I think, controversially, I would make it up. I think rather than like the issue we have, and I'll take this from a role-playing aspect. Sometimes the most boring bit of role-playing is creating the characters and coming up with stuff because it's, I think for me, the most important thing is getting in there, getting going, whatever like that. And you don't want to bog people down with too many options. This goes for people new to role-playing games as well as, children and adults and all that sort of thing, is that if there's too many options, you're like, oh, I don't know what's good, whatever. I think I think I would take the mechanic from another Doug Lewandowski game, which is called In Name Only, which essentially is like your name is indicates what talents you have. So for me, as Fiona, I have 5 talents. I have fire magic, ice magic, oversized weapons, nature magic, and archery, and those are my talents. And the more letters I have, the more talents I have. But when I take that number away from 8, that will be my modifier. So the more talents I have, I can do lots and lots of things, but I'm not very good at them. Whereas the less I have, the better I am at them. And I would just take that and just use a D20 roll, and that is literally it. And I would set the DC or the difficulty class for completing anything is just a 10, and that's it. I wouldn't do anything else. I would make up the story or ask, where do people want to go, and then just navigate it like that. So you're not tied to a particular genre or a particular system. I think I would take something like that. And the talents, like those ones I've mentioned, that those are from in name only, but you could be anything. It's like, what does your name mean? And then it's literally whatever comes off the top of your head. Like oversized weapons, what about, I don't know, ostrich feathers or something like that? It can be absolutely anything. And I think giving people that freedom, certainly maybe younger children, and you'd be like, great, this is what you've got. How can this help in the situation? And then maybe helping to narrow down that rows and giving them that chance to be free. That's what I've kind of been hearing. It's that when you play these games, you're like, oh, I didn't realize I could do this. And you're not, and then, like you said, later on, when you get to I want to do something more, that's when you get into sort of more crunchy mechanics and stuff like that. But I think just to start out, I would use that in name only sort of mechanic and just put it to any game that people want to play.
Allowing the players to have ownership instantaneously over their characters without going down. So what stats do I need to roll? What dice do I need to roll for this and that? Thinking about there's another game which kind of fits along the same line, but it's a little bit more restrictive. It's something like Lasers and Feelings.
Yeah.
Because it's so simple and you don't have to plan that much for creating the character. You just roll the D6 3 times and it gives you a really random story about who your character is. And you can tweak that for different settings. There's loads of different hacks over it. There's now an open license on Lasers and Feelings, which allow you to kind of redesign it for your own worlds. Things like that. So I have a slightly different question for James. We have all decided to descend upon your house and entertain you with games. What kind of games would you like your family to be introduced to? What do you think would help get your kids playing tabletop board games or RPGs? Maybe get your wife involved. So as if we're looking to maybe get families involved, what would be of interest to them, and how would you want us to maybe introduce them to them? So we've given you loads of ideas of different types of games.
Yeah, I guess something like Fiona was sort of describing about in essence, takes their own whatever they're into at that time, and sort of augments the game around that. So if they want to, and that's the thing with children that age, they're just jumping around in their imagination all the time. So that sounds like quite a good thing to do. But then the one you mentioned earlier, the Goblin Quest one with the kind of big bit of drawing at the beginning, sounds like that would be quite, if you can kind of sit them down and get them into that, that could be quite a fun way of doing it, really.
And actually as well, with kids of your sort of age, so 5 and 6, where they do have that imagination that's going on, even something really, really simple like story cubes can be great as well.
Story cubes, yeah.
So you roll half a dozen dice that have different pictures on them. You put them in together in a line. So there's a sun and a car and an elephant and goodness knows what, And then it's like, okay, who can invent the best story going from that end to that end with the pictures? It's a nice day at the new car showroom. An elephant turns up to buy a new car. And they go in all sorts of directions. And those are really good and very, very simple. Yeah.
Tactile things that allow them to basically, as James was saying, vibe off their own things that they're jumping around with at the moment. Because as we do know, kids do change what they like on a daily basis.
Yeah, on that point, actually, that's a very good point. I don't know whether you had any other questions lined up at this point.
I'm just thinking with the time, so this was going to be my last question.
Okay, because where I was going to go with this is maybe a good way of wrapping up. You just said kids do change their minds frequently. And another concern for people perhaps is, we can spend a lot of money on a load of different sets of games and then kids get bored of them very easily or they grow out of them. There are lots of free resources available, aren't there, for people to get into gaming. Has anybody got any recommendations for good free resources online? or otherwise?
There's
I mean, there
a-
are, as you say, board game cafes as well, where you can go and play for just a very small cost of entry to the cafe, or sometimes free, but you have food or drink or whatever while you're there. And again, libraries as well. Some libraries have games that you can play or borrow depending on where they are. But there are other resources available, aren't there, too?
Yeah, so RPG wise, there are millions of RPGs out there, and there's a big healthy community of people who produce free RPGs. So the one that I mentioned earlier, Lasers and Feelings, that's a free one page, literally an A4 sheet of paper that's an RPG, and is a really super simple game. It's Star Trek without the numbers on it, but done in very, very comic kind of ways. In regards to board gaming, it's a little bit harder. You can generally find the rules for a lot of things online.
Yeah.
But obviously with board gaming, it involves pieces, it involves cards and things. So it's a little bit harder that way. You can maybe engage them with something called Tabletop Simulator, which is an app you can download through the Steam store. Which you can then play games online with. So you can kind of pay a couple of quid. So instead of the £20-30 that a full board game would cost you, you can buy it as an app for maybe £3 or £4 and play it on the computer, see if they like it. If you're wanting to get them interested in gaming, there's a lot of very cheap games out there as well. You don't have to go out and buy these 30, 40, 50 pound games. Some of them running up, so like Gloomhaven goes to 120 pounds, 130 pounds. Twilight Imperium again is 140 pounds, but these are big time sink games.
And I can't imagine 5-year-olds playing Gloomhaven, I've got to be honest.
I'd say 10-year-olds could play
Definitely,
Gloomhaven, but
yes.
Twilight Imperium, I can barely play that.
I can't play that.
I'm
game.
40.
It's terrible.
I don't have 2 days to play one game. Thank you very much.
No.
But there are games like Unstable Unicorns is about £10 for the game and is brilliant for kids because it's very, very visual and stupid. Epic Spell Wars is probably about £15. So there are some cheaper options. And there's a big community out there where people will be happy to lend you or teach you and play with you these games. And there's a big trading community out there as well. So
and some board game shops, gaming shops, like the one in Crediton, for example, and lots of other places as well, also hire games on a kind of weekly basis, as well as being able to buy them as well. So it's like, yes, you could buy a copy of Ticket to Ride for £30 or however much it is these days, or you could pay £3 and hire one for a week and try it out. And if you like it and everyone really gets on with it, then you can buy one, or you just hire another game the next week, and that's a good way to do it.
That's great.
That's a really good way to do it. I know a few shops over lockdown had that kind of idea because obviously they weren't allowed to have people in. So my friend owns a shop down in Norwich. He ran a kind of a hire system for the games. But yeah, board game cafes I would definitely recommend if you're looking to get into gaming and don't know where to go or how to do it, or just want more interest. Find your local board game cafe. The owners will be able to point you at things that will fit your needs and what you want. Hopefully they should know all the games in their libraries, but I know some shops have like 700 games and they're like, I know them, but I don't know all the rules. But they'll be able to point you in the right directions, and there'll be friendly people there to help you. So I know a few cafes who are very, very much like that and very open and friendly. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would quickly recommend, just to shoot in there at the end, is that, yeah, as we sort of said, there are like free RPGs. Like I would look for any quick starts. The games you've got, oh, that's really interesting. Go on. There's websites like Drive Through RPG or DM's Guild for the D&D or Storytellers Vaults, and look for. They're usually either free or pay what you want. And what I always say is that, you know, pay what you want. You download it for free. Have a look if you like the look of it. Toss them $1 or $2 their way. And that's the thing, most pay what you want is usually $1, $2 for the people who are doing it. So, and they'll probably give you free previews as well of certain bits of it. Like I've had to do some writing recently, and I've looked at lots of stuff recently for Feywild stuff, because that's quite big at the moment with Dungeons and Dragons. And there's all sorts of interesting, inspiring things that I'll just take that for my game and stuff like that. And so I would say, like, check those sort of websites out. There's also stuff like going into the board game sort of thing. There's also print and plays as well, where again, pretty much what David was saying is, games that are just solely designed for you and your printer. So it just costs you the ink you've got, and then creating it from there, those little booklets and stuff.
That can sometimes cost you more, because we all know how expensive printer ink is nowadays.
Again, yes, it costs you if you have a printer, but I think it's always useful to have a look at those things. If it's just another way of playing per se. And so quickly, finally, if you're not sure and you can't get to a local board game cafe or anything like that, have a look at review sites. Like the two I use is like Shut Up and Sit Down and Dicebreaker, who will do reviews of all these sort of board games and video games, and they're genuinely quite honest about whether you should get it or not. And certainly this Shut Up and Sit Down lot, they do lots of board games, and I will say they are aimed at adults, but they're very good at saying, actually, you could take this home and you can play this with your nan, or all that sort of thing. And I've bought quite a few of my games from their suggestions, so I would highly recommend their YouTube channels for sure, just to have a look around and see what tickles your fancy, really.
I would definitely start with Shut Up and Sit Down. But also be aware that there's also a lot of very ranty, argumentative YouTube channels out there.
It's not something you'd watch with the kids, that's for sure.
Just be careful about the ones you do watch, because there's some divisive opinions out there. But Shut Up and Sit Down is a very recommended one.
Yeah, try them first before sharing. That's true. There are also lots of good playthroughs as well that you can watch on YouTube as well. So if you like the look of a game, you can watch some people play it.
Who owned Critical Role before it kind of separated?
Geek and Sundry.
Geek and Sundry. If you go to Geek and Sundry, they as well have a lot of playthroughs of games. So they're another very good one out there as well. So you can definitely find out a lot about games on the internet. Kind of take your pick of it. What we'll do now, as I realise this has actually gone on for a lot longer than we had originally intended.
Well, that's good. We had lots to say.
Yeah.
Well, we could talk for hours, I think, but I don't think that's a wise idea on a Tuesday night. So we'll just have some closing thoughts about people's. Have one sentence about family-friendly gaming, and I say one sentence, and I'm looking at Fiona specifically here.
I'll go last.
Just one closing sentence thought about family-friendly gaming. We'll go with James. Just one closing thought.
There's lots of games there that I want to try out. I need to rewatch the video to get all the names.
What a recommendation.
About YouTube, you can rewind and watch everything again. Cool. We'll go with Fiona.
Give it a go. And if nobody else wants to give it a go, make them as the DM yourself, as the GM. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. You're the person that has to move to do it.
Cool. And Mark.
The whole point of gaming, in whatever form it is to enjoy yourself. So find something that works for you, works for your family, works for your friends, that you have fun doing, and do that. And share it with other people, and take other people's responses and try them out, and just enjoy what you do.
I think my final thought on that then is taking the same idea as Mark, is it's a game. Have fun with it. Don't get bogged down in the rules. If you don't know what they are, move on. Have fun and enjoy it.
Make them up.
Make them up. Nobody will know. Especially if you're the GM. Nobody knows whether you got the rules.
Nobody questions you ever, honest.
Well, we have a GM screen usually, so nobody can see what we're doing because we're making everything up. But yeah, have fun. It's a game. It's designed to be fun, and enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, then look for something else that you might enjoy.
Absolutely.
And don't force anybody to do anything. But that's it. So I think we can wrap up there. I don't know how you want to wrap this up, Mark, but I think
we will just finish by saying, on behalf of myself and on behalf of Libraries Unlimited, in my case, thanks to David and to Fiona and for James for taking the time to come on and talk about games. And yeah, everybody enjoy International Games Week, and then enjoy the other 51 weeks of the year and play some games in them.
Yay!
Thanks, everybody.